All of these incidents are prompting a lot of conversations. People are worried because these planes, all bound for India, by the way, from different parts of the world, returned back to base, citing a lot of technical issues. In fact, on one of them, there was an engine indicating and crew alerting system, or the ICAS, that went off. And this is a very serious issue, viewers. And I'm talking about the Hong Kong to Delhi flight. So all of this put together is making people wonder if flying is safe, if passenger risk is real, unaddressed and looming. Now, for long, viewers, foreign corporations that have endangered the lives of Indians have been given a long rope in India. Remember Union Carbide, the villain of the Bhopal gas tragedy of 1984? If we are not careful, history might repeat itself. Within hours of the AI-171 crash, an attempt was made to divert attention by blaming the pilots, if you remember. You see, some channels gave space to a chap called Captain Steve. Now, no one knows, viewers, who he was. But he flaunted his past and painted himself as a very credible voice. And he said the pilots were to blame. They fiddled with the flap lever rather than the thrust lever, viewers. I mean, think about that. Was Boeing trying to deflect attention from itself through some of these people? I don't know, viewers. In this age of disinformation wars, anything is possible. Boeing has remained surprisingly tight-lipped all through the episode, which is really odd, but this might not remain true for long. New video footage has emerged of the last moments of AI-171 that changes things. In the first sequence, and I'm going to show you that sequence, you can see that the AI Dreamliner has almost used the entire 3.5 kilometers of the runway. You can see it, it's constantly going on that runway. And this shows that inadequate engine thrust may not have been achieved. So adequate engine thrust is what is required, and for a long time it was inadequate, and therefore the plane had to use up more and more. Usually these kind of planes take about 2.75 to about 3 kilometers of the runway, but this went ahead by about half a kilometer more. Now I'm going to show you the new video, and let's pull that up. Now, seems to confirm this. If you look closely, you will see a little dot hanging from the swollen part of the underbelly of this plane. Viewers, it's been circled by us. If you really look closely, you can see it. This is the RAT, or the Ram Air Turbine, a device designed to deploy automatically if both engines fail or if the aircraft loses all hydraulic or electrical systems. The new video also has a better audio track, and the experts say that you can see that, viewers, you can see that circle and you can see something sticking. That is the RAT. And when that is deployed, viewers, you hear a very high-pitched sound, a squeal almost. This, according to aviation experts, is the sound of the RAT's two-bladed turbine spinning at high speed to generate emergency power, thrust. Now, the new video totally debunks a vicious, possibly even motivated campaign to artfully deflect the blame on pilots for the crash. The pilots were blamed despite the captain issuing a frenzied mayday call where he specifically refers to the loss of thrust, and he said, "Thrust not achieved. Falling, mayday, mayday, mayday." The new footage brings the focus back on the root of the problem, the Boeing 787 or Dreamliner. And it's not just the new footage of the AI-171, but over the last 24 hours, 3 more Dreamliners. We will come to that. Now listen to this very closely. Just listen to the audio. There you go, viewers. You can hear this sort of droning squeal. Now, viewers, as I said, in the last 24 hours, Dreamliners operated by Air India have been hit by glitches. The London-Chennai BA Dreamliner returns mid-air after a technical glitch. So it comes back to Heathrow Airport. Delhi AI Dreamliner returns after a technical glitch. Zurich Delhi AI Dreamliner 787 delayed after technical glitch. These incidents and the purported hit job on the pilots raised several hard questions. Was the AI 171 crash a symptom of a deeper malaise posing a danger to passengers? Is Boeing being given a long rope because it has a virtual monopoly over aviation travel? Has Boeing misled commercial airliners and aviation regulators across the world? Or viewers, are they simply derelict in their duties? And we have a panel tonight, viewers, to go into these questions because they all concern us. No one wants to be falling out of the sky, let me tell you, viewers. And there is a great deal of worry. Now, I want to begin this broadcast tonight by going across to Ed Pearson, who's a former senior manager of the Boeing 737 and executive director of the Foundation for Aviation Safety. And viewers, he was, in fact, one of the whistleblowers who basically called out Boeing. Now, a lot of people haven't been focusing on Boeing, viewers. Yes, we focused on DGCA, we focused on the airlines, and that focus is not inappropriate. It is very appropriate and extremely relevant. But let's also look at the deeper issues here. And we will have this conversation and we will take this forward with Suhail Seth, needs no introduction, Mr. Rao, who's been there with us, and of course the former Air Chief. So let me just build this conversation in with Mr. Pearson. Mr. Pearson, you've long raised red flags about safety lapses at Boeing, given the pattern of neglected warnings and technical anomalies. What specific systemic failures with Boeing do you believe could have led, and I'm only saying could have led, to the 787 Dreamliner clash in India?
Well, first of all, let me just say that it's a heartbreaking, and our thoughts are with those families, and it's just devastating. So I don't want to lose sight of that in the discussion of the technical stuff. And there's a lot of questions, obviously, that we don't know, and looking for answers from the CVR and also the digital flight data recorder. And I don't want to, say that these are connections. I will just say that, we have had concerns about manufacturing and manufacturing quality on different airplanes that Boeing makes right now. And unfortunately, this all kind of started with the MAX crashes. But, the 87 has had its fair share of issues as well. It's got a great safety record, up until, this terrible tragedy. But we do have some concerns. We've seen issues involving the gaps in the fuselage. We've seen water leaking into the electronics equipment bay, which is never good. There's been other issues, manufacturing issues. There was a recent airworthiness directive, I think, on a horizontal stabilizer locking nut. So these are quality control type issues. But really, I wanted to just kind of shift the discussion, if I could, a bit. I think at this point, it's really important to really make sure that the investigation proceeds in a way that the public is kept informed as fast as possible, because, people are boarding these planes. People have a right to know. I think it's very important that the investigative authorities don't try to hold this back, and they are free and open as soon as they have the facts that they can share. So I just want to kind of emphasize that.
Well, viewers, I apologize that we haven't been able to label the screen properly. So next time we meet, we're going to have two windows with the labels and also the guests properly labeled, so that you don't feel around for who is who and who is speaking when. And we're going to ask the director to keep the shots of the rat, the visual of the rat, on air so that we can focus on that, as also, of course, the information about the three other Dreamliners that have had a problem. Now, I want to continue with Mr. Pearson. Mr. Pearson, why do you think Boeing has been allowed to repeatedly sidestep accountability? At least this is what it appears, both in the US and globally. And are FFA or FAA or DGCA part of this problem?
Absolutely. The FAA has been failing miserably in its oversight of the Boeing company for many years. They have great people, but the leadership has always believed, it seems, that it's important to help Boeing, when the reality is they need to make sure their priority is the safety of the flying public and passengers. And so we've seen repeated mistakes by the FAA and failed oversight. Unfortunately, it seems that they have a tendency to downplay or deflect or deny. We call it all the D's. And so this is a real problem. Our FAA needs to really step up and do their job and do proper oversight. We've had a lot of issues. We've seen, and again, this isn't just unique to Boeing. I mean, we've seen that there's some information that, Airbus planes aren't perfect either. But in the United States, at least, the FAA has been failing miserably, and we need the DOT to do a much better job. We met with several legislative staffers back in March on the anniversary of the ET-302 MAX crash, and we advocated for an interagency task force because we felt like it was too important. This is too important. Aviation safety is to work 9 to 5 and take the weekends off. They need to work around the clock. And these agencies, Department of Transportation, the FAA, the NTSB, they need to work around the clock because this is too important to the world. People need to trust these airplanes.
Trust these airplanes. And the only way you can trust, viewers, is by verification. And you can only verify what's before your eyes. So someone needs to get a lot more transparent, especially the airlines, especially the DGCA, especially the manufacturers. There are all sorts of problems now being reported. Are they being reported because there's more focus now, people are more aware? Or have these problems always existed and they just haven't caught our attention because we've been, as usual, looking somewhere else? So these are important questions. So Seth is here with us. But before that, let me go back to Mr. Pearson. Boeing has been accused of using its influence to silence dissent from both within and outside. At least that's what is being said. Can you share instances, Mr. Pearson? This is very important.
I mean, I've seen and heard of stories of employees who have unfortunately been retaliated against when they've spoke up. Now, supposedly this has changed, but we keep getting feedback from people that there's, it's a giant company. And so even if the leadership team is putting out all the right messaging, in a large organization, you can have individuals at different levels who think that their main job is just to get the job done and get the planes out the door. And so, we're really trying to emphasize that the job is to build high quality planes, the highest of quality planes. And so I would like to say that, we want the Boeing company to be successful. It's important to our country and national security. It's important to the global economy. And
right.
So, yeah.
Well, that's an important point. But now, viewers, let's open this up, because who assesses quality? Boeing can make many claims. Now, Mr. Pearson seemed to suggest that the FAA has been a little lax for whatever reasons. We're not going there. By extension, the DGCA, viewers, it's another regulator. If it's only taking on board what FAA is saying without really challenging the facts, then we have a problem. So he'll say we have a problem. We have a problem.
And, just taking off from what Ed said, Donald Trump in his first term requisitioned Boeing to create a new Air Force One aircraft. And they said, yeah, we'll do this, blah, blah, blah. Kept getting delayed. If they don't care about their own president, do you think they give a toss about us or anyone else? Ed is absolutely right. Boeing is one of the craftiest organizations in the world who use the hegemony of America and American politics to great advantage. Ed was a whistleblower. There's another whistleblower even deposed before the Senate and the Congress. Nothing happened. So no one in our country is asking questions of Boeing. I don't know why. Maybe paid, maybe hired.
Who is the no one? Who should be asking these questions? Shouldn't the government be? I'll tell you, the experience of Union Carbide 1984 has singed us all. 84, I'm taking you back. What is it now? 2024. So do the math on that, 40 years. I'm taking you back 40. Yes, 2025, 2024, 25, whatever, 41 years. I'm taking you back, Sohail Seth. Do you remember the cover of that magazine, The India Today? What happened?
So let me tell you.
They were too big. They just walked all over us. But the Modi government is different.
I'm glad you're asking that question, because none of your colleagues or most of your colleagues haven't asked that question. most of your colleagues, or one of your colleagues certainly, has platformed a joker of a former pilot who then had to retract his so-called expert testimony. The
Yeah, that's
problem
because
is
I went after
India
that
today
guy.
has
I
more
went after
aviation.
that pilot, more than 1 million hits and views, and I shamed
I'll
that
tell you,
pilot.
India today, as we speak, has more aviation experts than functioning traffic lights. That's who we have become. The seriousness of the issue is being deflected from. What is the issue here, Rahul? There's the DGCA, which is the regulator. There's the airline, and then there's the manufacturer. As you said, that the pilots on that horrific day used the entire kilometrage of the runway. Why? Because they were seeking thrust. What is that a corollary or a result of? Engines. Then when the Mayday call happened, this entire thing unfolded within 52 seconds. No one has asked that question. There have been irresponsible, callous, insensitive rascals on television and elsewhere who have blamed pilots who can't account for themselves or answer for themselves, who have blamed the airline, who have said, oh, this happened, this happened. I mean, for God's sake, there is an investigation that has to be underway. But here's what's also happened.
Said, look, the airline, I'm not going to give anyone a free pass. Let's not give anyone a free pass tonight.
The vultures from America, also known as certain kinds of law firms, have also arrived in Ahmedabad.
I know that. That's why we're doing this story. They're all there today. But I have to ask you, Suhail.
My feeling is Boeing must be made accountable.
No, but
as
who makes them? Only a government can. These are massive companies. These are massive companies.
You have the most clout. You have the most clout as the media. Make the DGCA and therefore the government responsible.
So we have.
Tell them that we have to put them on the mat. Without putting them on the mat, without doing anything, we're constantly apportioning blame.
So you agree that DGCA is part of this problem? You agree?
You're asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
There you go, viewers.
The regulator is part of any issue that deals with airline management, aviation safety, and aviation procedures.
Let me put
across
it
the world.
Let me put it to
FAA, exactly the same.
Yes.
FAA is also responsible. It may come under the Department of Transport. It's equally responsible.
Okay.
Now you tell me, in the last 24, 46, 32 hours or whatever, you had a British Airways flight which had to dump fuel in the Strait of Dover and then turn back to Heathrow. Again, the same aircraft.
I was coming to that. That point. There are 3 aircrafts, viewers, today. I know one British Airways aircraft and 2 Indian airline aircrafts. Same 787 had a problem. And those are the figures and facts on your screen. And you can see that fuel being dumped by the British Airways plane. Now, viewers, it's a Dreamliner. All of these 3 aircrafts were Dreamliners. Now, I want to bring in KVJ Rao, former cabin crew of Air India. Now, it's obvious that there's a problem with the plane. It can't be happening on the same day. And in fact, one of them put out an EICAS, or Engine Indicating and Crew Alerting System, the ICAS. The ICAS, viewers, that's serious. That means there is something wrong with that plane. And these whistleblowers are not wrong. They are showing us what is the problem. The same thing happened with viewers Union Carbide. We knew there were problems. We knew that Union Carbide was cutting corners. We knew that the equipment they were using was problematic. It had been red flagged and we ignored it. What do we want? More planes to fall out of the sky, Mr. Rao? Who is going to wake up and collar Boeing? I can't do it. Suhail Seth can't do it. Someone big needs to do it. I mean, if the Indian government can't, then I'm sorry, who will? The FAA is sitting on its hands. Surely the DGCA can't become a sideline player watching from the ringside. What is happening?
Rahul, who let the enemy in is a question that needs an answer. When the 787 came in, we had flagged it because from day one we had an untested aircraft. If you go into history of the last 5-8 years of the Dreamliner, with Air India, we had panels falling off. We had so many issues and we had flagged it. If you do a research on the Boeing issues that took place with Air India in the media, we had given so many stories to the media at that point of time. panels falling off, batteries burning. There were a lot of issues. And we were flagging them from day one. But then the government of that time, the DGCA, they were all hand in glove. Because we bought the aircraft. I don't want to go back to history. But the Boeing deal itself was a big conundrum that we are not able to decipher as yet. Who placed the order? Why did we buy so many aircraft? There were many issues raised at that point of time. And that aircraft was on the drawing board at that point of time.
No, but those issues remain relevant today. So why aren't we having a review of all those decisions?
Mr. Rao said,
Who has to, Rahul, who has to do the review?
Today. Mr. Rao said, we are raising them today. In hindsight, everyone is very good.
No,
in hindsight,
Mr. Seth,
works.
I have been raising it for the last 10 years. It's not today. I have paid a very heavy price. I've lost my job for writing a letter to DGCA. And the Bombay High Court tells me, but it was your responsibility to write. And I'm fighting a battle. I'm fighting Air India and its managers who are covering up.
That's a big claim. That's a big charge.
They were covering up every flaw of that aircraft.
Why would they be doing that, sir? I mean, see, look, the reasons that Tata's was given Air India really...
Rahul.
No, hang on, because of their trust. Look, let's not be cavalier here. Tata's is a... Look, I'm not siding with anyone. So, viewers, I'm only siding with viewer public interest tonight. It's very important. But the Tata's bring something to the table which is called legacy. And that legacy has been built on public trust. And that's why everyone said there's no one else but the Tatas who can turn around this airline and bring it to its former glory, make it a Maharaja. Right? Remember, let's not forget that. Let's not forget, that's history. It's recorded history. Now, are you telling me that Tata is gambling that legacy away because it wants to cut a few corners to make a little bit of money?
Not at all.
What is going on? Then, Mr. Rao,
you've
got to explain this. Yeah.
Let me tell you, and Mr. Rao will bear me out because he was part of that company. Whenever there has been a national crisis, whenever there's been a crisis of bringing back Indian nationals stranded anywhere in the world, the only airline that comes to everyone's rescue is Air India, including after the Tatas took over.
Yeah.
So let's not doubt their integrity,
Okay.
their purposefulness, and their devotion to India. Brand India and
No, but I'll
Indians.
only judge them by the results. I'm sorry.
What Mr. Rao said, Mr. Rao said is worth discussing.
Okay.
His point was, when the aircraft deal was done, the issues qua this particular type-rated aircraft were pointed out. That is something that you need to investigate. I'm not a journalist. B, as Mr. Rao said, if DGCA had been informed, then the question that begs an answer is, why did the DGCA not take why did they not take any steps to blame an airline? And most importantly, I'll tell you one thing, you know what pained me the most was not the airline. You were blaming the pilots, you were blaming the crew, you were blaming brave and valiant engineers.
That was
you
shocking.
Were blaming
that was
people
shocking.
Who gave up
I mean, I don't even agree with that. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that anyone is a
holy. Never went into that territory.
But do you know? Do you know, Suhail Seth? Do you know, Suhail Seth, that the family is so cut up with some disgusting elements in the media that gave that kind of horrible character assassination.
Has journalism stooped to levels of vulturism?
Look, I completely agree with you there. And I'm the first one who pointed this out.
Padma Award to?
I said, I know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. I don't want us to get personal, but I know who you're talking about.
I will get personal.
Okay.
You have got personal through that rascal on television donning a pilot's uniform, accusing pilots who gave up their lives, who died in that horrific crash. You have no empathy for their families. You have no sympathy. In an hour of grief, you behave like a goddamn TRP-driven vulture. And you say, and rightly so perhaps, that I shouldn't make it personal. Of course I'll make it personal.
Okay.
Because no one is defending those pilots.
No one is defending the crews.
No one is defending the Air India staff, which continues to fly aircraft as we speak.
Let me tell you. I think Suhail Seth has made...
Upset.
No, it's fine. It's very good. Because I got very upset when I saw those interviews. A flurry of interviews. And I'll tell you, viewers, when I tweeted against that person, about 30% of you people turned on me. At least there were 70% who saw reason. And today, who's vindicated, viewers? That same pilot has done a somersault, but not the journalist.
Because he was paid. He must have been paid by Boeing.
And now what do you have, viewers? You have proof that it was the aircraft that was not up to standards, not the pilot.
Rahul, we've been addressing this issue from day one. Nobody was listening to us.
There you go. No one was listening.
8 of us lost our jobs.
So who is responsible, sir, for shutting the door in your face? Tell me, name those people. Let's have it out tonight.
No, I'm telling you, the CMD of Air India at that time was Mr. Rohit Nandan.
When are you talking about? I don't know which Nandan.
He's talking about
Air India
2011,
CMD.
2012, when Nandan was there.
Yeah, that's when the Boeings came in.
Forget
Even
them.
today.
Okay, so
even today, Campbell,
if there is a problem, no, if all this is well known, I understand.
Sir, even today, Campbell is responsible.
Okay,
he's the head.
So
how can he absolve himself from the responsibility?
So there is a huge raft of evidence claims, Mr. Rao, to suggest that the plane is the problem, and the people who are the custodians of this plane are not doing anything about it. Fundamentally, this is what he is saying. This is a provocative claim, viewers, but one that might well be borne out by the facts, because there are just too many coincidences here, Air Marshal.
This report
Air Marshal, one second,
says...
Sanjeev Kapoor. Yeah, 1 second, sir, I'll come back to you. Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor, former DG, Inspection and Safety, is here with us. Now, who is to blame, sir? A lot of people have been calling me saying that, are we going to be safe when we take the next flight? People are really shaken up. It's a lot of money. You know, it's not cheap to travel by air, sir.
I feel reading, listening and seeing the narrative that has been put out of last many days, the commercial interests have overtaken flight safety at some stage. The aircraft on ground is a loss to everybody. So come what may, even with slightest in aviation, we call certain limitations, which is signed by the technical people. You can fly with A, B, C, D, E, partially unserviceable. This can be overlooked. This radar is partially serviceable, but we have a standby. This communication setup is working properly, but the other one is partly serviceable, so we can take. All these kinds of clearances are given just to make sure that the flight is not cancelled, because it has hundreds and hundreds of people who have to travel. There are hardly any spare aircrafts to put these on. Now, coming specifically to this issue which you have been saying, there has been recorded evidence for many years that the pilots, the ex-test pilots and engineers were in the management of Boeing company. Somewhere about 20 years ago, they realized that we have to make profit. So they got the MBAs and the finance guys to head Boeing company in US. So there, the engineers and the pilots in the management started to be sidelined, and there the downfall began. So thereafter came the 737 MAX issue. Thereafter it came. But coming internally into our country, I feel we need to look at our regulator, that is the DGCA. The DGCA originally had ex-Air Force people, that Air Marshal Zahir, Air Marshal Rezae, Air Marshal Denzen Keeler. They were all DGCAs, and the way DGCA was run is set up by the Air Force people. Somewhere, due to certain reasons, the people who are non-aviators have come into the whole system. They have never flown any aeroplane. They have absolutely no idea about how the machine flies, what are the, So they are advised by the people who have certain knowledge. Now, those people in the system are partly, fully not conversant with the realities, because most of them would not have flown these kinds of aeroplanes. So the whole issue comes to the point that we need to look at the ways how we can improve the whole thing. The second thing, in my opinion, is the getting of foreigners as the CEOs of our airlines. My issue is that to run our country's aviation, to run and manage Indians, we have enough people here.
Those are not arguments that are going to change work culture. Let me tell you. Look, Indians take over Google and Microsoft and all of that.
It's bizarre.
That's not. I'm sorry, sir. I have to
argument.
disagree with you. I mean, let's not get so parochial that only the Indians. Look, the point is that there is a problem.
That logic, Satya Nadella shouldn't be running IBM.
That's what I'm.
Sundar
Yes.
Pichai should not be running Google. No, 1 minute. Your nationality doesn't make you competent
exactly.
or incompetent.
The point is the process. It's the process.
With due respect, Air Marshal, it is an illogical argument at this stage to now open another divide. Oh, no foreigners should be running airlines.
I'm just suggesting that
by that logic, Indian Air Force should not be buying aircraft which are made abroad. Why do you buy Rafales? You should only be buying HAL. Your present Air Chief has criticized HAL. No, sir. If you want to debate on logic, let's debate on logic. If we want to debate on emotion, there's no debate at all.
Sir, Air Marshal, sir, please.
You're happy to buy Rafale.
Look, my point is, who is accountable? Who is accountable? That's the point. That where does the buck stop, viewers? And let me go back to Mr. Pearson one more time. Given Mr. Pearson the growing body of evidence and past patterns, what would accountability look like in this case? What must regulators, especially in countries like India, do now to ensure that they are not complicit in any alleged Boeing negligence? I think that's where this story rests.
First, I think the trust and verify is really important. I mean, I share with you that we have seen, unfortunately, a pattern of deterioration of standards, and the FAA, we think, has been, unfortunately, complicit in a lot of this. I think the other countries need to realize that they have a responsibility to their citizens to make sure that everything is done properly and not to just take it on the word of the FAA or Boeing or even Airbus, to actually check and triple check things. We've seen countries that are shocked at some of the things that the FAA has not done. And we think that the FAA needs a lot more oversight from the Department of Transportation in the United States. It seems to operate almost independently, and yet it's a subordinate agency of the Department of Transportation. So it's really important that international aviation authorities, for example, let me give you an example. The investigation itself, right? The U.S. has appointed an NTSB representative who's going to serve as what they call the accredited representative, and then of course India is going to be the investigator in charge. That accredited representative from the United States is going to be the liaison, if you will, to Boeing, the FAA, and other U.S. Suppliers, for example. And so it's really important that that investigative process follows the ICAO Annex 13 standards. And sadly, we've seen, at least in the case of the MAX, we've seen NTSB withhold evidence from international investigators. And this is an issue right now as we speak. We're seeing there's information about the 737 MAX disasters that happened several years ago that still hasn't been shared with all the parties to the investigation. So we really need honesty and integrity in this investigation.
I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? So I'll say that's the bottom line. And the question that follows really is that, okay, these guys will make some claims, Boeing and company. Do we even have the expertise within the DGCA or whichever audit organization we have, watchdog, so to speak, to do due diligence on these claims? Because Mr. Rao says we don't, or we ignore them. For what reason, I don't know.
I think, as Mr. Rao said, as the Air Marshal said, as Ed said, there is obviously going to be greater probity, greater focus, to use your word, greater transparency in the way the aviation sector moves forward. A. B. You can't throw the baby with the bathwater. There has to be an investigation which is tenable, honorable, and which satisfies every passenger, whether he or she is a flying passenger or plans to fly. Finally, I will only leave you with one thought. You run a television channel. The Air Marshal was in one of the finest air forces in the world. Ed worked for Boeing. We can't say much about Boeing now, but I'll say one thing. No company, no corporation, no airline wants this kind of day ever in their lives. So it'll also be, to my mind, a huge recalibration, as it will be. You saw, Rahul, we discussed it also. You saw Chandra's statement.
Yeah.
And N. Chandrasekaran has been a proven professional. You saw his statement that day. He said two things. One is the darkest day in the history of the Tata Group. But the more important thing, he says, we will stand by the families, we will get down to the bottom of this, and our business is to serve with trust and transparency. Very few people would do that.
Okay.
And let me tell you, give Indian aviation a chance. There are some people who are going ballistic, saying we should stop flying, ground all airlines, ground all fleet.
No.
For God's sake, yeah.
That is.
You have to have some level of intelligence.
Yeah, that is.
We are not fighting for a revolution here. We are fighting for an evolution.
Yeah, that's a good point. But the Tatas will have to walk the talk. Mr. Chandrasekhar will have to walk the talk. We'll be sitting here, viewers. And I'm sure they will. I'm sure. Because, look, at the end of the day, viewers, it's all about trust and credibility. And the Tata Group doesn't take it lightly. So one hopes that whichever way the feedback loop works, whether it's the Tatas upwards into DGCA back up into FAA into Boeing, whichever way this loop goes, we've got to have the answers. And I leave it to this, viewers, because we are hoping that all the data is going to be put out in the public domain. So there's nothing left. And remember, viewers, I don't even remember 4 years ago who was sacked for the last tragedy. If you remember, viewers, there was a massive tragedy.
Calicut.
Yes.
The last aviation minister who resigned was Madhav Rao Sindhya, if I remember right.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. This is going donkey's years back, viewers. So we need someone to put up their hand and say, if I don't get it done in the next 100 days, I'm out. That's what we need. I leave it to this, viewers. We're not going to let go of this story. We're not going to let go of this story. We're going to have answers. We're going to skewer the people who are responsible. But let's move on, because there's a war. It's entered its 4th day, the Israel-Iran war, and you can see those pictures, devastating scenes. And unfortunately, this war is intensifying, escalating. It could even become nuclear, viewers, at least from one side, or maybe both, and I'll tell you why. Iran and Israel are both taking hits, even as the latter is establishing dominance. There is no doubt that Israel is beginning to turn the tide in its favor. India is asking both sides to de-escalate. And I'll tell you, we are not alone, viewers. A number of other BRICS countries also don't want this war. But sadly, there are a few voices in our own country. The main opposition party, the Gandhis-led Congress, the communists and other elements from the India bloc who are dead against Israel and are openly supporting Iran. Now, these parties and their ecosystem, camp followers, ought to hang their heads in shame. Their calls for India to oppose Israel and back Iran ignore a developing Iran-Pakistan Islamic nuclear axis that poses an existential threat to non-Muslim nations like Iran and India in the region. Pakistan has been the biggest supplier of expertise to Iran. In 2003, it admitted, when UN inspectors who examined Iran's nascent uranium enrichment center in Natanz concluded that the designs were identical to Pakistan's. And Pakistan was forced to admit that its own scientists, also called the father of the Islamic bomb, A.Q. Khan, had been a conduit for blueprints that helped Iran amass nuclear weapons, or at least attempt to do so, or go quite down the road in doing so, in manufacturing them. And if confirmation of this nuclear handshake were ever needed, it has come just yesterday from Iran's National Security Council member Mohsen Rezae. The Iranian military official says that Pakistan has told Iran that if, quote, Israel drops a nuclear bomb in Tehran, we will drop a nuclear bomb on them, unquote. Listen first to this reaction.
پاکستان گفته اگر اسرائیل بخواد بمب اتم بزنه ما به اسرائیل بمب اتم خواهیم زد. احساسات مسلمان‌ها تو منطقه فوق‌العاده رو به افزایش خواهد بود. هرچی ما قوی‌تر عمل کنیم، هرچی مردم ما همراهی بیشتری با نیروهای مسلح عمل کنن، ما از این گردن عبور کنیم، اون طرفش یک اقیانوسی از پیشرفت سیاسی، نظامی، اقتصادی انشاءالله جلوی ملت ما خواهد بود.
Viewers, the prospect of an Iran-Pakistan Islamic nuclear access is a threat for every non-Muslim state in Asia, particularly India. The stakes couldn't be higher. Let me tell you this. the stakes couldn't be higher. And as we speak, attacks to degrade Iran's nascent nuclear capacities or advanced nuclear capacities have taken place, viewers. The Fordo enrichment facility has been targeted, the Arak heavy water reactor, Natanz nuclear facility, Isfahan nuclear facility, all of them have been targeted. I don't know to what extent, but there are these reports. And I want to first begin with Nadav Steinman, Board Chair, International Legal Forum from Jerusalem, Hamid Reza Gholamzadeh, who's the director of the Diplohus. I want to first begin with you, Mr. Steinman. This is an important day in this entire 4-day war because it could go either which ways. There is talk of the Iranians wanting to come back to the talks table. Israel says the worst is not over. We're going to go for all the nukes. We've secured the airspace over Western Iran, etc., etc. The Pakistanis apparently have jumped in and they're threatening to help Iran settle nuclear scores with Israel. You know what's been happening, so I'm not going to labor the point beyond a certain degree, but I have to ask you, is this war justified and why is it from Israel's point of view? What's the aim here? Where is it going to stop? What is the exact aim?
Although I'm not a member of the government, I'm an individual and a lawyer, specializing in international law. But nevertheless, your introduction asked the most pertinent questions. Is this an Israel question or is this a world question? If I may rephrase it with your permission, yeah. Because the threat of Iran being nuclear is what this is all about. The parameters of international law don't require India nor Israel to sit and wait to be attacked by their nuclear neighbors. There is certainly well-established rights of self-defense of every country, but that self-defense includes the ability to prevent attacks on your own people, which is what Israel is very clear in its intent of this action. And I think this speaks very much to your audience as well, sir, because from an Indian perspective, when we look at your nuclear neighbor and now the threats that they're saying that they're going to join or they're going to assist Iran, which Iran claims to be a fact that they received that communication from Pakistan, then you have this particular issue that shows itself as not being localized, although these are two very separate countries between Israel and Iran, quite a distance apart. But we see that this axis is an axis that threatens not only this country where I'm sitting in now, but many others in the world, including very much India. So that causes a sense of fear and concern, although in some respects, if you look at it together, and if I may ask that we look at this together from an Indian and Israel perspective, that we are doing a service to the world to ensure that these countries who are accessive of evil not to have nuclear arms within their hands. So what is the end goal? To respond to your question, it's been clear today that Israel is stating that the end goal is to get Iran at a table in order to sit and make a decision that will be conclusive, not a permissive agreement that allows Iran to upgrade or continue the production of its nuclear facilities, but one that protects the citizens of your country and ours as well, that prevents this growth of a nuclear state. And I think we can both admit that we do not want neither India nor Israel to have Iran with a nuclear warheads. But let's be clear. I think we have to listen to what our enemies are saying. Your neighbor and our enemy, Iran, state unequivocally who they wish to destroy. They are not secret about their aims. So it's incumbent upon us in Israel to prevent that from occurring. That's the element of self-defense here. But bringing again to the Indian perspective, India has provided this balanced approach to this. But now is the time for India, who could be a significant player in this game, to be able to assist to the parties without an extremist view, but a middle of their own view, which India has done, in order to enable the parties to actually negotiate a settlement together.
Okay.
That's my plea, I suppose, to India.
Okay, so let me bring in Sushant Sareen. Sushant Sareen, look, our problem here is that you're seeing an emerging axis between Pakistan and Iran. Pakistan would love to have Iran on its side. It can also then settle the Afghan question for a while. There'll be strategic depth. That's what we're being told. Baluchistan, they have a buffer. All of that becomes somehow, for them, less of a problem, less of a headache. But if it's going to come down to sort of exchanging nuclear material and building Iran's nuclear capacities and also giving them what is known as the Islamic bomb, it's a problem for us. And therefore, there are enough people in our country who are delusioned. I think they suffer from some delusion about Iran being this old civilizational ally, this, that, the other. I think there's a problem. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sushant Sri.
Rahul, there is a problem. And very clearly, it's partly because people have religious affiliations and sectarian affiliations with Iran. So there is that issue. There is, again, a religious angle to the whole thing. The Israelis have been demonized by a section of society in India. So yes, all of those political and other issues are certainly there. But on a more strategic plane, look, I think there is a clear and present danger that Israel perceives from Iran because of the kind of state of relationship which they've had. And those relations have been particularly bad for many decades now. And there is this danger that because Iran also threatens to annihilate Israel, Israel fears an existential threat from Iran getting hands on nuclear weapons. Now, despite the Iranian leadership disavowing nuclear weapons, the fact of the matter remains that all the developments on the ground suggest that Iran has been working towards developing nuclear weapons. Now, if you even remove Israel from the equation, right, for a moment, just remove it from the equation, I think even the rest of the Middle East will be severely destabilized if Iran was to start possessing nuclear weapons. Despite all the recent developments between Saudi Arabia and Iran and the newfound friendship, they've had a history of bad blood between them. These are two different, in a sense, sectarian affiliations which they have, and that Arab and Ajam has been going on for over 1500 years. It's as old as Islam itself, even older in some ways. So there is, within Saudi Arabia, you will hear a number of voices saying that, look, if Iran gets nuclear weapons, we have no choice. We will have to get nuclear weapons because today our relations might be on even keel. Who knows what happens tomorrow? Other countries would also want to possess nuclear weapons. That means it becomes a very destabilizing thing for the rest of the Middle East. The problem, however, is that whatever diplomatic solutions were being sought fell very far short of what people desired the end result. I don't think there was any real meeting ground. JCPOA up to a point was working, but I think because it had a sunset clause, I think it was problematic for many people that what happens after the agreement runs out. Does that mean that you have to then negotiate a fresh agreement? And even now, none of the diplomatic things which are on the table seem to find any meeting ground. Now, Iran says that we are not going to stop enrichment. Okay, the others are insisting on that. How are you going to monitor it? Are you going to be able to police that particular agreement or not? Those were very, very serious questions which nobody was ready to answer. Now, Israel has taken the steps it has taken. Let's see how the war proceeds. It seems that Israel is able to cause significant damage right now in Iran, but is also taking some amount of punishment itself.
Yeah.
Will the other countries jump in? Will Iran back off? If they back off, how will they be able to sell it to their own people politically? I think that becomes a problem. For us in India, there is, of course, the Pakistani angle. There is the diplomatic angle because we have excellent relations with Israel and we don't have bad relations with Iran. In fact, we have fairly good relations with Iran, and there are many areas in which we cooperate with it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So for us, it becomes a big problem. For the Pakistanis, it's not a problem because they are anti-Semitic in nature. And the Americans who talk about anti-Semitism, the Trump administration,
are quoting the Pakistanis.
Yeah, they don't have a word to say about the Pakistanis and
the Americans have no principles right now under their president. I don't know even if they ever had them, but nonetheless, let's just put those people aside for a few minutes.
So for us, the issue is that we have a country like Pakistan, which keeps threatening to lob nuclear weapons on us, which has had a history, as you very quickly put it, of sharing nuclear technology with Pakistan, and which now has threatened that, we are ready to jump in. And there's a lot of people in the Pakistani space, political space and other space, who are threatening that, we should be able to join Iran and launch attacks against Israel.
And punish those who are supporting Israel also. That's the other underlying sort of threat that is being held out. Okay, so let me just open this up because I need to go across to Mr. Gholamzadeh, who's the director of Diplo House. Mr. Gholamzadeh, there is a view around the world that the clergy in Iran is pushing its own interests, and in doing so it is endangering its people by pursuing nuclear weapons despite being signatories to the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, etc. It is being obstructionist, and perhaps the regime itself, which doesn't enjoy much legitimacy, is really throwing the people under the bus, and that there will be some repercussions.
What you call a regime in Iran, which is not a regime, it's a state and government. It's something that has been selected by its people. And the people have voted for it after the revolution, and for the government, they have been voting every other while. And it's not like we fool our audience. Let's respect our audience. It's not like that the religion would be good when it comes to the Israelis to create a Jewish state. The religion would be good when India focuses on Buddhism and tries to actually put limits on Muslims. And when it comes to Iranians and Islam, it would be all axis of evil and very dangerous and something like that. It's not working like it. Iran is a state. It has its own laws. It has its elections. It's a democracy. And it's not attacking anyone.
No, do you support the Hezbollah? Do you support the Hezbollah?
Well, of course we do. Of course we do, because they are supporting
the Hezbollah. Do you support the Hamas? Do you support the Hamas?
Of course we do, because they are defending the lands.
Now,
viewers, they are defending the country.
Okay, so I think viewers in India are intelligent enough to know
the regime that you're supporting, regime that you're supporting, Israel, is attacking the others.
No, one second.
Attacked all the neighbors.
We're all, of course, all our sentiments are running a little high right now, so I can understand that.
It's not about sentiments, it's about logics.
No, but one second. Hang on. You talked about logic, sir.
Logic.
You talked about logic, and you said let's not fool the people. In India, viewers, we have very limited patience for states that support non-state actors who go into other countries and use extra constitutional means.
Who has gone to other countries? Palestinians are their own country.
One second, sir. One second, sir. One second, sir. Just allow me 2 minutes.
This is good.
1 second. 1 second, sir. Just 1 second. So, in India, we've suffered, as you all know, viewers, for years altogether. But I want to get to the point here. Are you trying to tell me, sir, that the clergy in Iran is a very open clergy? It doesn't repress human rights?
Of course I do say.
They do or they don't?
They do not oppress people, and they are working with their citizens. All the citizens right now are united.
The women who refuse to wear the headscarf, they were killed. There are disappearances of people, of opponents. All of that is legitimate practice, you think, sir, in line with law, and that is not repressive?
Has its own constitution. Every country has its own constitution.
Okay, but which constitution?
Something
but
doesn't mean that it is not logical or rational.
So viewers, here we have it. You have a regime that actually, at some level or the other, doesn't conduct the elections in a manner that is internationally recognized as a free and fair process. If you go by the highest standards. No, hang on. And perpetuates itself in power. And there is no freedom of expression. There's limited freedom over your own.
Your criteria is
look, I'm not going down that route right now. My point is are the Ayatollahs, for example, the regime there, and I want to bring in Jane Kinnimong, is it really putting its own interests above those of the people in pursuing this nuclear fetish, in scratching this nuclear itch? That's the question I want to ask you, ma'am.
We need nuclear energy.
I think it's important to... Okay, I'm going to come in now. Thank you.
Yeah.
There is a very strong international consensus that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. Of course, Iran itself says that it's not pursuing a nuclear weapon. The JCPOA, as your guest said, was working, but it stopped working because the Americans withdrew from it in 2018. And then Iran started playing a dangerous game of brinkmanship. It started to increase its enrichment of uranium. Now, some people think that was to get the capability for a bomb. Others think Iran was trying to use that as leverage to drag the US back to the negotiating table. And they believed that had succeeded because the Trump administration was talking to Iran. Diplomacy had not broken down. Talks were supposed to happen in Oman, mediated by the Omani foreign minister, yesterday. There were international proposals being worked on to try to find a solution to the enrichment issue. And if enrichment had continued, it would have been monitored and inspected by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has condemned the strikes on nuclear facilities. So we had not got to the end of the road with nuclear diplomacy. But I think now, on one hand, many Iranians do not want to see their country bombed, and they are blaming both Israel and their own government. On the other hand, there are criticisms emerging that Iran, at best, miscalculated by playing this game of nuclear brinkmanship, and that it is going to have to reassess its policies very deeply if indeed the current political system survives this. Right now, that's really in question.
Well, is regime change going to happen? We don't know. Viewers, one just hopes that whatever does happen does take the people of Iran along. Because if that doesn't happen, we've got a problem. We'll have a problem the size of Iraq. We'll have the problem the size of Afghanistan. So whatever has to happen must happen through the mandate of the people. And that's where we want to leave it at this. We're going to come back to this story, of course, tomorrow and look at other angles of this and how it's going to directly impact India if this conflagration expands beyond borders as it threatens to do so. We leave it at this. Thank you for watching. Palki Sharma coming up with her show, Vantage.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Do you believe, Shyam Prasad Mekhaji, that Galwan is the original surrender?
See, somebody put some tweet. I'm not here to defend or endorse all those tweets. I speak about my party's stand, and I speak for myself. Who is this guy? I don't even know him. So okay. So we pick up something from the social media. We pick up some photograph with some big leaders, and make a huge issue out of it. Don't be childish. We need to grow up. So that's the one issue. Second, so about, again, this is also a similar issue, like the garlanding thing. Come on, you know better than that. You know better than that. If we want to do a drama, there are people who does the drama, there are people who does it honestly. Okay, so it's not about, okay, while putting the flowers, one hand is where, one hand is where. What kind of political discourse we are doing? We should be talking about our issues. Let's do politics. Let's do that discourse on the political issues. Whose image is better? Who shall we trust? So what do you mean to say? people should not trust anybody from Congress? That's not the question. We trust everybody, we trust Indians, we trust Indian system. That's the premise on which we operate. So that's the premise which you are trying to tear down into pieces.
Okay, Shyamprasad Mekhaji, the question is, whom should the people of Bharat trust, public trust, with respect to furthering Bharat's interests? Now,
every other Indian.
Okay, I didn't interrupt you.
Yeah.
May I complete? Then I'll go to the other panelists also. Actions speak louder than words. A picture speaks 1,000 words. Now, these pictures say something. Actions, attitude, approach mean something. The other aspect you totally moved away. The aspect of brazen political appeasement and accepting the support of a party that was hailing and celebrating Ajmal Kasab along with the others. How does that escape? How can somebody, an entity which is endorsing all this, does not bother? This person who you said is some random person has Rahul Gandhi's picture there on his profile picture and claims to be a very serious party worker. He hails from the Andhra region, Andhra Telangana region, and he has put that. There is no clarification, no admonition from a party, which is something which is concerning. This despite the BJP's IT cell chief raising this up and highlighting it. So, for a party leader whose media cell chief knows every single detail of where the Prime Minister is, which country he is, where he's touched down, where he's landed, and there is an opinion of that which is per se, when this is put out, how did it escape notice? Is a question. Or did it not matter? That's why these questions have been asked. Charu Pragya, do you agree with Shyamprasad Mekha? Much ado about nothing. Very Shakespearean in his attitude. You're on mute, Charu Pragya.
My apologies, Anand. Good evening.
We are very
to
democratic.
you.
We don't suppress anybody's voice. Please go ahead.
Absolutely. Good evening. Namaste to everyone. Now, the issue here is, and the problem here is that even after 21 years in public life, if Rahul Gandhi cannot even manage to garland a national hero with respect, something's really wrong with him and with the Congress party for not pulling him from the position he's been enjoying. Because of what? Dynasty? Nothing else. And every time Modi ji travels abroad, Congress suffers from political FOMO. This is fear of Modi overseas. It's just that and nothing else. They do not understand equations. They do not understand geopolitics. They do not understand that India is a very important voice which connects the global north and the global south. We have emerged as a really strong nation, and whichever power table there is in the world, India has a strong place on it. But unfortunately, the only G Congress still understands is Ghotala and Ghamand. That's about it. Even right now, the way they have gone on about a very important state visit, they forget to make this distinction between the leader of a political party and the leader of a nation, and it has happened too many times. Even this word surrender that Congress loves throwing around, it reeks of one, disrespect for our nation and our armed forces, to complete arrogance, because it's like you can say whatever you want and you get away with it time and time again, and nobody is pulled up for these kind of statements. And I take strong objection to it. Cyprus is important to India. We've had a long-standing relationship with Cyprus since independence, and it's even more important today, seeing that Cyprus is a key player in the relationship between Turkey and Pakistan. We have to be careful moving forward. We have to make sure that every time India speaks, it is taken with seriousness, and we cannot have our own opposition undermining our position in the world. It's shameful the way Congress does that.
Well, you've said a lot about the Congress party, but a certain president of a certain nation continues to argue that he is the one who weaponized trade to bring a pause on Operation Sindoor. And
Yes.
there has been nothing that's come from either the Prime Minister or the BJP or the Bharatiya state on it. When I say
There
state, the
actually-
center on it.
Yes, but there actually has, Anand, because time and time again, our defense minister.
Hello, Hello, namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's day 4 of the Iran-Israel war. What began as missile exchanges has now spiraled into a full-scale conflict. Israeli fighter jets are striking deep inside Iranian territory. Iran is firing back and civilians are being trapped in the middle. Israel's objective here is clear: to dismantle the regime and cripple Iran's nuclear program. But will Israel succeed in this attempt, or will this push Tehran